What's up, everybody? You know, when we look at the pros and the cons of certain things, it makes us wonder, why there are pros and cons to it. I did a video, as you all know, where I asked if Ian Flynn had dropped the ball on Mecca Sally, and there are some that feel he hasn't, and some feel that he has. But let's take a look at the pros and cons of this whole story arc. Let's take a look at the pros, for example. For one thing, in the pro side, it's definitely a change. It definitely, on a pro side of things, gives other characters more spotlight. It gives them more spotlight. It focuses more on them than it ever has. I mean, you take a look at Team Freedom, for example, Rotor, Big, Cream, Heavy, and Bomb. It's allowing them to finally be focused on. That's a pro. Same with the Secret Freedom Fighters. It's allowing characters like Elizus, Larry the Jinxlings, Shard, the Wolf Twins, Lita and Lyko. And I can't think of who else is in that group. Silver, if you will, as much as people may not like it. They're giving them more opportunities to shine and be focused on. The same can be said, believe it or not, for Team Fighters. You're allowing Amy and Tails, as many people have been waiting for, to be focused on even more so. Another thing in the pros is it's giving them something else to do. It's actually giving, in the eyes of some, it's giving Amy and Sonic and Tails, and mostly Sonic, a real reason to want to fight Eggman, a real reason to want to stop him, a real reason to do what many people call the Second World Tour around just to chase them. It gives them a reason because it gives them the reason in trying to get Sally back. That's what it does. And speaking of Sally, another pro on this is actually gets to show a side of her, even though it's robotic, even though it's due to her roboticization and weaponization, gives a chance to see a side of her that, sometimes when she says certain things, like some people have said, they're actually kind of unique. They're actually kind of wisecracking, kind of, basically you're hearing things out of her that, yes, because she is robotic and weaponized, you wouldn't normally hear from her if she was de-roboticized. So that's a positive as well. You're getting all these things. Now, another positive is you're actually trying to legitimize a villain, a video game villain, that many fans feel has fell flat as a villain, and that's Dr. Eggman. A lot of people feel he's fell flat as a villain because of the way he's been treated. I mean, you take a look, again, like how he's been treated, and a lot of people feel he's fell flat. And that's another positive about the story arc, is you're trying to legitimize him as a villain. Now, if you're a fan of the video games straight out, it's also a positive because it seems to be more video game based than anything. So, that's a positive in itself. It seems to be focused more on the video game aspects of things at certain times than anything. I mean, you take a look at the addition of Qbot and Orcbot, and there you go. But now, we take a look at the cons, if you will. In exchange for the pros, we take a look at the cons. The cons basically are the fact that even though it was ambitious of Ian to try, I have to be in agreement that this kind of a story arc spanning this long is not his greatest strength. And that his greatest strength is the short story arcs of 2 to 4, maybe even 5 issues worth. 6 at the most. Those are his strongest strengths. And that can be seen in Sonic Universe. So even though it's been very ambitious, out of due respect, this has kind of been not the best idea. we may get a good, conclusion to the story arc towards the end of the year or in the fall of this year. But until that happens, well, we're just going to have to look at it like in the, because I'm not just saying this because I'm not just saying this because it's how I feel about Ian Flynn. I'm saying this from what I've read and heard from others, and quite honestly, it's not been the most ambitious. I mean, it's been ambitious, it's very ambitious. You got to respect that, but it's not been the best idea. Another con about this is the fact that it's always constantly been interrupted. I mean, you keep constantly interrupting it from the eyes of many, if you will, or from the eyes of those, by constantly interrupting it with the Olympic tie-in issue, which was late as far as the video game goes, and the Summer Olympics itself. With the, even though it's for one issue in universe, the All-Stars Transformed issue, which again could have easily both been used to help extend the story arc and try to shorten it. And then of course you have as many people, and of course you have, even though a lot of people are looking forward to it, you have the crossover with Mega Man, the Worlds Collide crossover, which a lot of people have agreed, hey, it's a great idea, but it could have waited until the story arc was done. So that's another thing you want to put into the cons section. I'm looking outside because my dog thinks she might hear my mom pulling up or something. But anyway, that's another thing you can put in the cons, the fact it's always been constantly interrupted. And of course you want to look at some of the sub-arcs, like say the whole situation with Loop and Hathor and now the current running endangered species, which also had to be rewritten and revised due to certain lawsuits, then yeah, that also doesn't help as well. You see, that's another con as well. One other one is the fact, another con, which kind of also, when you take a look at the pros that I mentioned, another con is even though, okay, positive-wise, like I mentioned, you got focus on other characters, but contrast to that, the cons, if you will, on that, is even though you focus on more characters, you don't focus on them as much as you should because you're constantly just focusing on team fighters, which is a good thing. Another con on, if you will, another thing in the cons, if you will, when you look at it, and when some fans look at it, is the fact that when the story arc's all said and done, you're going to end up having certain characters like, say, Sally, maybe Antoine, maybe Rotor, maybe Bunny, and even Nicole. You're going to have all these characters, as some people put it, Segified. And many have felt that it's not necessary. But it's something also but even though you could put this in the cons, if you will, you could also put it in the pros. This is one of those things that's kind of like, it can go either way. It could be in the cons, but it can be in the pros, because positive-wise, it does kind of freshen up the characters, make them kind of refreshes them, make them kind of like, newer to the newer readers. And that's a positive. But contrast to that, the cons, if you will, like I said, is the fact that that in the eyes of some, this is what this whole story arc's been leading up to. Nothing but a story, nothing more than just trying to redesign certain characters that in the eyes of some don't need it. Some, don't need it. So that's another con, but it also can be looked at as a positive. So that's kind of like a back and forth deal. It's kind of like I say, a back and forth deal. So it's a positive and it's a con. It's a pro and a con. So that's the one thing that's kind of like in the middle. You can go either way. It's one thing that can go either way. But to me, those are the pros and the cons of the book so far, of what's going on, the pros and the cons of this current arc that's been happening over the past year. So it's just my opinion from what I've read, from what I've read from other people. It's just my opinions from what I've read from what other people have said. So if you disagree or agree, let me know down below. Take your time in watching this video. Comment if you like. Again, take your time in watching this. But let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with those pros and cons? And what other pros and cons do you see that have come out of this arc? Let me know down below. Comment if you like. Take your time in watching this. And I'll talk to y'all later. God bless.